Edmond, you're live.
Hi, how are you doing?
Hey, doing well. What did you want to talk about?
So I recently got, I don't have talking points, I just have a general subject. I've recently gotten into a lot of writings by D.T. Suzuki and Alan Watts and a lot of 70s kind of Eastern guru types. And then later read about a lot of atrocities that were done historically in the name of Buddhism and a lot of those Eastern religions. And I read about these horrible historical things, and I find that I can recognize they're terrible, but it's very easy for me to separate the philosophy from the event. So I'm thinking whether it's ethical to hold a view knowing that it's led to that, or can I say it was abused and it didn't really, I'm just I'm very new to this.
Sure. So the funny thing is, I think we have trouble distinguishing between a causal link and something that's just correlated, right? An example of that is a lot of studies have come out saying, oh, hey, being in a religious community, you live a longer life. Well, there's more to it, though. The fact is, being a part of a community is what causes you to live a longer life, right? Having those connections are what does it. But without that context, someone can just say, no, comes from the church. And so if you're looking at a specific, religious view, then I would decouple it from the religion first and see if this is just an example of, hey, good people doing good things, being kind to each other, and just happens to be something co-opted by the church. And just as one other example, the idea that religion needs to have a stranglehold on holidays or on social gatherings, that it needs to have a stranglehold on the media that you consume. All of those things are just keeping you in that ecosystem. But ultimately, when you break out of it and you kind of see it for what it is, you're able to get a better view of the landscape.
Yeah, I think Vice Rhino hit on this really well a couple of weeks ago when he was on, just talking about how, any clock, any broken clock can still be right a couple of times. And just because a value is held by a religion doesn't mean that it necessarily needs to be thrown out. But you just want to be mindful. You want to be asking questions. If I may borrow from another religion, if we want to use that term loosely, belief system, I don't myself identify as a Satanist, but I do maintain this very important ideal for this conversation and for any of these conversations. I have it taped right up on my computer so I can always look at it. The idea is that the spirit of compassion, wisdom, and justice should always prevail over the written or the spoken word. So if you want to engage in some religious philosophies, if you want to take on some of these ideals, that's not necessarily an inherently bad thing. Be mindful of your source, be asking yourself some good questions about it, but ultimately run it through that filter. Is the spirits of compassion, wisdom, and justice overriding whatever it is that you're believing? Because if so, then you are in good shape. But you can get into some real danger when what's written in your book starts to become more important than, say, not murdering children or not throwing rocks at gay people. If you don't hold on to that ideal that compassion comes first, you can get yourself into those types of situations.
And also, just to kind of dovetail into that, there are a lot of situations where even when it can seem absolutely fine, there are times when, following a specific religious, tenet can have horrible effects that you don't really recognize in the moment. So the example that I'm thinking of there is this idea of the Holy Spirit entering into you and giving you this sense of morality, this idea that morality is something that is given to us by a God. We can break that down a million different ways, but ultimately this idea that we have our own Jiminy Cricket has led to people assuming that non-Christians don't. And it becomes used as this tool to otherize groups and to, make them appear less human, and has been a cause of strife and war and pain and suffering. And you would think, you would just look at it and go, oh, well, what's the problem with thinking that my morals come from my church, right? But if that foundation isn't set on a good reasoning, then it can also be an open door for those much worse things to happen. Having good reasons for the things that you believe, I would say, would be your optimal route.
I think because I might be more comfortable with exploring these distant religions because they're not very prevalent where I am. Where I currently am living, it's unbelievably ingrained into every system, and I would never was never attracted to those and never wanted to participate in those. But I think that, like, if I lived, for example, in Japan, I might find in my community, for example, almost 90% of people are and very loudly and proudly Jewish, and I'm generally not for it. I find a lot of the book distasteful, to say the least. But if I was in Japan, for example, I can see myself being like obsessed with this. Like, are you crazy? 4,000 years ago, some people wrote all their favorite stories, and it's got like miracles and kung fu prophets. It's insane.
It's cool though. I mean, as far as like fan fiction is concerned, that's super neat. Hey, Edmond, can we tell people where you're from? Is it okay to tell people where you're calling from?
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah.
Okay, so you're calling from Israel, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I think it's especially nice that you're calling today, because for a lot of Christian denominations, today is Easter Sunday. And
right, it's Oyster Day.
Well, Zombie Jesus Day. Actually, if you read included, Jesus isn't the only one who rose. That actually people rose from their graves and wandered the city. So that's pretty neat. But ultimately,
I looked into it. He's not a zombie. He's technically a lich. He didn't eat anyone. I think he's a lich. Okay.
Hold on a second. I don't know. Does that mean he has a phylactery?
Yeah,
there's a Jesus phylactery. Okay, and we're way off base. Edmond.
Sorry.
That's okay. We could geek out about that forever. But Edmond, what I would advise is this: you have a heritage, and you have a cultural identity that you were raised with. That is a legacy that was given to you. That is yours. And I don't care what reason you have. I still celebrate a lot of Christian holidays, not because I take it from Christians. And I know people are going to say in the comments, well, most of them are co-opted from pagans, yada, yada. What I'm saying is, if you have an excuse to gather the people you love and tell them that you love them and have a good meal and share, those bonds of compassion and togetherness, like any excuse you have, I think is a good excuse. You don't necessarily need to believe or follow certain religious tenets. I mean, shit, man, I think I'm as atheist as they come. And if somebody invites me over to a Passover Seder, I am in. You
just missed it.
Fun. Yeah, drink too much, you can't go, wake up, get some matzah farfel in the morning. I'm fucking great. That doesn't mean that I need to believe to celebrate and enjoy those things. So if you, for some reason or any, think that there's some moral or ethical thing that's tying you away from, being able to enjoy those things with your family, dude, it's yours. Nobody can take that from you, and you are entitled. You are allowed. Religion does not have a stranglehold on community and togetherness and celebrating the people that you love. So if that ever comes into conflict, I know I feel like that is in relation to what you're asking about. You have every right to it.
Mm-hmm. For the cultural sort of results of it, you mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I
see.
But the question about its ethics, that is something you can spend a lifetime on, man. And I think Christy has it absolutely right. That using that principle. Christy, could you give it to us again? That principle of.
Yeah, just the spirit of compassion, wisdom, and justice should always prevail over the written or spoken word. And that's the seventh of the fundamental tenets of the Satanic Temple. Do with that source material as you will, but just know that you do have permission to cherry pick and to beg and to borrow. You want to be mindful of your sources, but ultimately, yeah, so long as you're remembering that anything that's coming out of a book, anything that is coming from a pulpit, no matter where this information is coming from, you want to run it through that filter a little bit before it turns into actions.
Agreed. And
so would it be helpful if I gave an example of a specific, wouldn't say belief, but a choice that you can make that for me would be derived from that? So
let's do one before we head over to the next call. Go for it.
Sure. So there's one that D.T. Suzuki writes about two poets, one Tennyson and the other one, I think, Basho. One clearly Eastern, one clearly Western. And they're both talking about a flower. And Tennyson writes about, he picks the flower and examines the roots and he learns about it. And Basho just writes about, you pass by a flower because it's nice and you look at it and you move on. And it's about a kind of philosophy of, am I a part of the world or am I outside of it, examining it? Now, the second one would lead to more, innovation. You're going to learn more. It's how you get scientific progress. It's how you learn more things. And about things in general in life, I understand one is more productive and leads to all the medicine and scientific advances we have, but I personally kind of just want to walk by the flower and not really care. It gives me, it makes my day easier. Mm-hmm. But I know that I can't spread it, because one of these options is a net good.
And that's the great thing about us having this many people on the planet. My math is terrible. And the fact that mathematical and scientific advancements can increase, well-being, increase our lifespans, get us off this planet, knowing that, you would think, maybe the ethical thing to do is drop what I'm doing and dedicate my life to those pursuits. But the fact is, we're all working on those things together. And so don't think that you need to be compelled to get into a subject that you're not interested in. In fact, there's a parallel in the Christian church that I went to. We called it being in the world, but not of the world. And so, I don't know, I guess so long as you're remembering that your actions have an impact, and as much as you want to separate yourself away from things, you are ultimately here with us and experiencing this with us together. Christy, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, just that you can embrace a little bit of balance here. The one thing that we can say about man's search for meaning is that it's a search and that you're never really going to get there. There's not a philosophy. You find a beautiful new idea and you get really excited about it. It means so much to you. And then you realize that there's sort of an opposite and contrasting one that you find is also true. That you can examine the flower or you can simply appreciate the flower, and both are valid. So you can embrace a little bit of that disparity and just find a little bit of balance and impermanence. And we can borrow from Buddhism and Satanism and all these different philosophies. Yeah, as we discuss all of this, while acknowledging that these ideas that have been examined and discussed through, really thousands of years, at least in written history, have some merit, have some value. That doesn't mean that they should override our obligations to our fellow humans. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they're in our best interest. But just because a liar says the sky is blue doesn't mean the sky isn't blue.
Well said.
So thank you very much.
Yeah, hopefully that helps.
Yeah, I might call in next time because I have some cultist family members I don't know how to deal with.
Sounds good. I like it. Look forward to it.
I'll tease you.
All
All right. See ya. Have a good day.
Take care. I actually, I think I finally have the way I want to say it. It's our cultural inheritance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I like that. I'm gonna say I want to use that more often.